deviated. Now, in that, what has happened is the country is, I would say the whole country is torn apart. Some people want to enter the global economy, to enter into the global market. They want to be very rich and they want foreign investment, foreign capital to come in and make use of the human beings and of nature in the country for their profit making, and we are giving tremendous concessions, and they are allowed to take away whatever they earn. We are spending very heavily. We borrow and spend very heavily to build infrastructure for their capital exploitation, and we are not gaining anything of it. As a result, the rich people have become very rich and the poor people have become much poorer. Therefore, the country is torn apart. The whole country now, prior to 1977, I would say the systems that we had were good. There were lots of weaknesses in it, but at least there was better equality. I mean, one would say that we were sharing poverty, but anyway, people in a way were happier, less frustrated because of lack of, or at least the differences, the diversities were much less. Therefore, we shared in common life. For instance, I would say, if you look at the health situation, now I wouldn't say that the health system that we had earlier was perfect. There were lots of weaknesses, but there was the possibility of anybody, whether that person was rich or poor, going into a hospital and getting himself or herself treated when ill. Today you can't do that. If you are rich, you get your medicines and you can see expensive doctors, you can enter rich hospitals and pay heavily and get yourself treated. If you are poor, you can't buy the basic minimal treatment that you want to buy. So therefore, they are just left out. Now, this is something that shouldn't happen in a country like Sri Lanka. It's totally evil and sinful for this country to be allowed to do that. So therefore, I just can't agree with any type of capitalism, but what happened after 1977, entering into this global trade and trying to enter the global market, we made the situation much worse. In fact, if you look at people's own participation in the whole process, there was a time when people could push themselves, I mean, bring pressure upon governments to do certain things that they thought were good for them. There was the possibility of, if you look at the agriculture policies in the country, the agriculture policies in the country prior to 1977 were much more giving attention to the poorer small farmers, their survival, their water, their land, their cultivation, their marketing and so on. That was there. But later they thought, no, we had to produce for export, we had to earn through exports, therefore high value crops have to be produced and we can't do it, therefore we invite foreign investors, we give them water, we give them land and we depend on them to help us to overcome poverty. That doesn't work, it didn't work. Therefore, the people have become much worse. If you look at the situation of hunger, I mean, the rates of malnutrition today in Sri Lanka is very serious, and recent statistics say that about 30% of our children are malnourished. They are stunted and they are wasted, about 16% wasted and so on. Now, we didn't have this situation earlier. There was the possibility, this is a country, if one looks at the blessings of nature, this is a country where nobody should go hungry. Food can be obtained. In fact, we have written a book on this, a small booklet. Sri Lanka is a country where food is given by nature free of charge. Therefore, there is no reason why anybody should go hungry. But we have deviated away from it and we are now saying, if you are rich, you get food. If you are poor, you don't get food. And we are trying to do that in relation to water. There has been an effort. We have been fighting this from 1980s. We have been fighting against charging for water or privatization of water. We have had one of our strongest struggles have been against privatization of water. But if that is done, much of it is done already, the poor people will not have their essential water to drink. So these are things that shouldn't happen in a country.
How much pressure do you think Sri Lanka gets from external sources to conform to the multinational demands of this country, especially out of your research when you were doing the free trade zone?
Well, I would say there is considerable pressure coming from outside, but that is not, I wouldn't put the entire blame on foreign forces. I would say it is done, it is accepted willingly by a rich minority of people in the country who benefit from it. Therefore, they willingly invite it. I mean, 1977, Jayajyawardena, when he invited these foreign investors to come in, we really were not very indebted. I mean, if you look at the economy in 1977 or prior to 1977, we had very little foreign debt. And therefore, there was the possibility of our not accepting their conditionalities. For instance, Dr. N. M. Pera, when he was finance minister, he was asked to devalue the rupee. He disagreed. He didn't agree because that was going to increase the cost of living of the people. Now, after 77, what happened was we agreed with the whole process of devaluing, saying that if we devalue, we can sell more of goods to the world, our markets will increase. But what has happened? Today, in 1977 or 78, the value of a dollar was 8 rupees. 8 rupees to a US dollar. Today is 115 rupees to a dollar, almost 116 rupees to a dollar. So the cost of living of all people in the country, all items in the country, including a bullock pitter, has increased that much because of that whole policy of devaluation. But are we selling more? We are not selling more. I mean, people are not drinking more tea and buying more of our goods because they are cheap. So therefore, that policy has not worked in favor of our economy, but still it continues. Now this is not unknown. The policy makers in the country, I wouldn't say that they don't know this. They know it, but they continue to do it because they benefit. It's not they who pay the price, it's the poorer people who pay the price. Now take the recent policies, right? Regaining Sri Lanka, the strategy that was developed by Chandrika in 2002 and introduced by Ranil Senanayake, Ranil Wickremesinghe, 2003. Now it talks of constructing a network of express highways. Now the cost of that is huge. Now can we afford these express highways? Do we need these express highways? There are lots of debates about this. In fact, in a country that is as populated as in Sri Lanka, where you don't have large hundreds and hundreds of miles of empty land, you can't build this kind of express highways unless you displace a lot of people. There were 4 express highways planned: Matara Colombo, Katunayak Colombo, Kandy Colombo, and 2 link highways, right? Now in all these 5 cases, people are resisting. People are fighting against it continuously, and we have been supporting them in their struggles. Why? Because they will be displaced, and the routes marked out have been shifted so many times because they can't go through with it. That shows that it's impossible, and we don't need it. For what purpose? Now there are serious contradictions in the policy thinking of even this present government. Now, if you ask one of the ministers today about the agriculture policy, they will say, Apivamu Ratanagamu is our policy. What is Apivamu Ratanagamu?
We do it and the country rises out
Yes,
of...
yeah. And it says, it was declared, that policy was declared in September 3rd, 2007. The envisaged target is to build 4 million home gardens. Now, if you like, 4 million home gardens. Now, I was thinking how they worked out this figure 4 million. It's 20 million divided by 5. 20 million is assumed to be the whole population, a family of 5. Therefore, all families should have their small home garden. That's the declared policy.